We're live. Sweet.
Are we alive, though?
It's been a day. It's been a day, let me tell you. Oh, man.
That's why people check in with us, just to hear what the children have done to us.
Seriously. Okay.
My collar back here. Did that for you.
Elvis.
That's me. That's me. I'm so tired I can't even think of an Elvis lyric, which is really sad.
I ain't nothing about a hound dog.
There we go. Ain't nothing but a hound dog. All right.
What is going on?
Today, we talk about the world, the new world of the old ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Traditional but new, because it's on social media. What our great-grandfathers did in a way our great-grandfathers would never recognize.
Yeah. Yeah.
The new trad movement.
Okay. We got our notes up.
Okay. Maybe we'll do hot chocolate next time, huh? How about that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Welcome to Control Free Christianity. We almost have our acts together. And yet, again, we are to my right is a pile of dishes that we'll work on when we're brain dead after this podcast.
Yep.
So, anyway, today we're going to talk about the trad movement and a little bit what's going on there and our thoughts on that. My algorithm is now completely messed up. My Instagram has been showing me so many recipes on sourdough. I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. And no, you don't have to be trad to like sourdough. But if you are trad, you love sourdough. Mm-hmm. And probably goats.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's kind of funny because, like, trad, typically, we think of, like, the 1950s housewife. But now, like, our more modern version is more like homesteading. Mm-hmm. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of an interesting blend.
Yeah. But wear an apron.
Yeah. Definitely an apron is a must.
Yeah. Well, there's actually, we're going to start off with things that we like about the trad movement because there's a kernel of truth there. And then we're going to, well, we think we're uniquely qualified to speak on the trad movement.
We have a unique perspective, yes.
Imagine there is a cloud and a streaking DeLorean comes up with lightning, comes out of the cloud, and out we climb from the future to tell you the future of the trad movement. And we can do this because we've already lived it. This has happened before.
Yep. But in a microcosm.
Yes.
So, like, what's happening on a global scale right now, we lived in our teen years in a micro culture already.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yep.
Well, I think what's interesting is that there's, like, this growing divide that's happening, and people probably see this on social media, where there's the trad movement on the one hand, and then there's more of a progressive movement on the other hand.
Yeah.
And you get people falling on one side or the other and feeling like they can only fall on one side or the other.
Right.
And then it's very divisive between people.
Well, it's part of the culture war. It's one of the battlefronts, I suppose. How do you do family? You have progressive families, you have non-families, you can get into all kinds of stuff on the left, all kinds of things. Mm-hmm. Whatever you can imagine. Mm-hmm. Things I've never imagined can happen over there. Trad movement is a glorification of the past. And there is something about that. There are no glory days for humanity. I think we need to remember that.
Yeah.
We went wrong in the garden. But anyway, we're getting off track. We were going to talk about what we like about the trad movement.
Yeah, okay.
So you first. What's something you like about the trad movement?
Okay, so I actually do love the culture of the 1940s and 50s because I grew up with it. This is something people don't know about me, but my grandma was
Far older than you look
I am a grandma on the inside. And
on the spiritual level.
yeah, like my grandma was an antique collector. So when I would go to her house, it was just chock full of relics from the past. You know, I could read books or listen to records or watch movies or read magazines, like the tabloids about the movie actors of the 40s. You know, I know more about Van Johnson than I do about typical, you know,
Brad Pitt. Say Brad Pitt.
Brad Pitt. Yeah, yeah.
It's a great cultural reference.
Thank you. Came up with it myself. So yeah, I don't know very much at all about today's culture because I really don't feel like I grew up in it. I feel like I grew up in the 30s and 40s.
Why? I feel like you have to explain that.
Well, okay, so the thing that my grandma did to bond with us was watch movies from the 30s and 40s.
Okay.
And then my parents picked up on the same thing, and we bonded with my parents, us kids, through 1930s and 40s movies.
Okay.
So that was just the culture I grew up in.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Obviously, I grew up knowing that all movies are sin. And I kept my salvation by avoiding movies.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That's why I don't know who Brad Pitt is. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna say something I like about. I like the sourdough bread, and that's kind of tongue in cheek. I actually like cooking good food. Mm-hmm. I don't, I think canola is a blight on humanity.
Yeah. I can agree with that. Doesn't even taste good.
Yeah, I don't like the flavor. I like the flavor of butter, olive oil, bacon, things like that. So at any rate, I think, I do like more traditional cooking. And so I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's roll through this. What else we got?
Okay. I love raising kids in a world where there's less screens, more outside time, more just playing in the sunshine, maybe even with animals.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. I think the idea of monogamy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Monogamy is a good idea. I think we have participated in monogamy, you and I, and we vote yes.
Yes.
we enjoy monogamy. All right, what's another one you got?
I'm starting to run out of things. Family values.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, yeah, totally. Family values.
Yeah, we do value the family. Yeah. And if people, and there's things that are about the more traditional lifestyle, the trad lifestyle, the trad bros, the trad wives that we see, that are okay. If you want to raise goats, feel free. I may even buy your goat cheese because, again, we're back to food. I think there's something kind of wholesome about that. I think that's good. There's something about appreciating the small, regular things of life that I think is good. I understand the appeal. And I also understand that the world is changing so quickly. To try to go back to something that feels like it has roots or something that ties us back to our humanity is really important. So I can, I actually am very sympathetic to the trad movement. And in fact, I would probably get along with a lot of trad people.
Yeah.
So that's going to be something that, I can go out, I can shoot my guns with them. We can talk about deer hunting. We can, like I said, I'm gonna eat their sourdough bread and with their goat cheese and all this, and I'm gonna really enjoy it. So, this doesn't come from a place of animosity.
Yeah, yeah.
This does not come from a place of or even distaste. But we do have warnings for the trad lifestyle because of our own upbringing. So really quickly, our own upbringing. You talked a little bit about yours. We both kind of grew up in fundamentalism, where it was trying to return to roots. Being homeschooled, part of that was to return the family as a family unit. That's something that has a lot of trad people do advocate for homeschooling. Again, we're not opposed to homeschooling in the least. In fact, we will probably homeschool our children so long as it works. But that is something that we're going to, but that is something that tends to go along with the trad movement stuff that we're seeing as well.
Yeah.
I spent a little time today scrolling through, and I really did ruin my algorithm. But I went through my through Instagram today, looking through a few accounts, and it is really interesting. A lot of the trad movement is driven outside of Protestant or evangelical or even fundamentalist circles. A lot of it comes from Eastern Orthodox and Catholic circles. It seems to have crossed over some of the denominational lines. So I saw more than one meme that referenced the Crusades in a positive light. I talked about the fall of Constantinople. I mean, we're talking some things that even our upbringing did not include. Focus camera. There we go. Oh, can you tell I was playing with the kids' marker?
Mira, gotcha.
Oh, you need to shift back towards me, baby.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, pretend like you like me. Oh, there we go. Camera back in focus. See, everything comes in focus when we come together. Okay, I'll stop. And so there is some elements there. I don't think we're going to dive too deeply into those things. We can talk about denominational differences at a different point. I just wanted to recognize the fact that is one of the components at play here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's interesting that the trad movement wants work to be accomplished.
Yes.
Right? And it also wants to serve the family.
Yes.
But I think that there's a problem in that they're very rigid about, well, the man has like man tasks that he does and the woman has woman tasks that she does, and it's not tailored to each family or each couple. It's like this is a cookie cutter all across the board, and it's very rigid about how they do that, which I find fascinating because again, like this 1950s nostalgia
yeah.
and this mold of like the husband takes the briefcase to work and the wife stays home and vacuums with her pearls, like this is just like the caricature. But
do you even have pearls?
I do, but I don't wear them a ton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I didn't know.
Wear them on Easter. I'm not anti-pearls.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, so like this caricature though, I find it fascinating that we look at that and think of that as like the epitome of trad or the epitome of like biblical womanhood and manhood, because that's actually an anomaly in history.
Yes.
Most of human history has been more of a blended family economy where the wife would take part in more marketplace things, activities, and helping to like, helping on the farm to create things to sell, or, just that's not like the idea that the woman just stays home is actually, I think, a product. Modern. Yeah, it's a very modern thing, and it's also a very affluent thing. So, yeah.
There's that too. I mean, this comes from industrialization. Men would work in the factories. Women would manage the family and take care of everything else. Poor women, though, would still end up in factories. So and their children would run the streets, and that became another issue. There's just a lot of cultural things. Whenever culture shifts, you're going to have a shift of how do we manage these things. And we're in the middle of one of those cultural shifts right now. The internet's changing everything, and as if that wasn't enough, AI is going to change everything all over again. So again, the appeal to our history, our past, stability, makes all sorts of sense. We understand the appeal. But that's why we serve an eternal God who is unchanging. Jesus is the same today as he was yesterday and will be the same tomorrow. And that is an eternal thing. We can trust an eternal God. Sometimes we don't have to go back to old practices for that stability. Sometimes there's wisdom in the past as well. So we just have to do the work of using wisdom to know which is right and what is going to be a good fit for our times and for our families.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a sense of just sifting through, working through things, and finding. Sometimes I'll go and I'll find someone like someone who's very, very, very different than me politically, and they may make let's say a gentle parenter, like someone who's into gentle parenting. I think there's a lot of good things about gentle parenting, and there are things that I'll take. But I am not an idealist, and I'm not a purist. I'll take some things that might make sense. There might be some things to phrase things that make it easier for my kids, and I'm like, yeah, why would I not make it easier for my kids to understand, or give them a little bit of time to comprehend for their benefit, or things like like this, being patient with him. But also at the same time, I'm going to do other things too. And I'm going to keep sifting through it. So I might find someone very far left and gives advice, and I'll be like, okay, that makes sense. Someone who's very far right will make some points. I'm like, hey, that makes sense. Someone who's kind of let's see. Someone who is culturally right but theologically left right now is Jordan Peterson. I'm not, I'll listen to him. He's a cultural voice. He's worth listening to. But I disagree with a lot of what he has to say. But he's made some parenting points that I'm like, those are reasonable things that make a lot of sense, and I will apply those things. And it just, so I'm kind of a hodgepodge of everything when it comes to culture, because I'm accountable to God not for how well I follow a trend, but how well I parent my children. And I don't care necessarily about the labels. I care about the faithfulness. And I'm going to work to serve my children and to serve you as my wife and to serve God, because that's what I'm called to do. And so am I a trad husband? It probably depends who you ask, right? I don't think so, because I'm not excited about trends anymore.
But we do fit into traditional roles largely. But we also
we subvert them sometimes too. So
yeah,
it's like we're going to be faithful to what God calls us to do, and we're not a cookie cutter for anybody else either.
Yeah. I think this is important. I actually talked about this on my own podcast this week, because when you look at, let's just look at women for a second. For us as women right now, I feel like we're asked to make this choice. Either you embrace feminism and you view men and children and the home and being a homemaker as a burden and something that you should run away from, because that's the patriarchy. Or on the other hand, it's like you should be a trad wife and you should be, homeschooling and sourdough and
churn your own butter
and all the things. And and I'm for a lot of those things, like we've said, but it's like you have to choose one. You can't dabble in both. There's almost this sense in which if you try to do both, people assume you're failing at both. Like there's no way that you could do both, right?
But these things aren't at war with each other.
No, and that's what I love about the Proverbs 31 woman, is that she does both. She looks well to the ways of her household, right? So she's a caretaker, she's a homemaker, she does well in her home, and her children rise up and call her blessed, and her husband also, right? So there's this care for her family. But she's also taking place in marketplace activities. She's doing real estate. She gives her sashes to the merchants, which means she leaves the four walls of her home. Okay? So something I was actually literally taught was bad growing up. You should stay at home. You should not leave your house, basically, unless you're with your dad. But, it's just like, okay, so you were asked to follow this dichotomy. And as I thought about that, I kind of came to the place where I realized I think we just need to say that biblical womanhood is not an aesthetic. It's not. And to say that feminism is freedom is not a biblical definition of freedom, because freedom is obedience to God and humility. That's what true freedom is. And so what does wisdom look like in your set of circumstances? What does it look like for you to be faithful with the things that God has entrusted to you in your family, in your set of circumstances? And I look at my life and I'm like, I've obviously been given a husband that I love very much and children that I love very much. So I want to do those things, right? And that is the clearest part of my calling, other than following Jesus. That's the clearest. And then the next part, as far as priorities, would be like, okay, I'm a wife and a mom, so that's clearly given to me. I need to steward those things. But then I also look at other giftings that I have, and I want to steward those too. And so should I feel like I can't do those things? Should I feel shame that I'm not fitting a specific aesthetic perfectly?
Well, again, it's like, what's the standard you're supposed to measure yourself by? And really, it's the standard given by God, as we see in Scripture. And there is also going to be, and part of that is as we work together, right? We're supposed to come up with what works as for us to fulfill what we need to fulfill for our family. So, No, it's not an aesthetic, which is good, which is great.
And I'm like, if you want to like do that aesthetic and that brings you joy, more power to you. Like, go for it. If you want to do all those things,
We have nothing against checkered aprons.
yeah. I know people who like love that stuff, and they should absolutely go for it. That could be their calling,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I know husbands and wives who are like, we just want a homestead, and that gives us so much joy, and they bring their kids into it, and I'm like, do that. Like, that is so cool. So we're not against it. I just think that we need to, whenever we reduce biblical manhood or reduce biblical womanhood to an aesthetic, that's problematic. And it becomes legalistic.
Yeah.
This is actually another thing that I've been thinking about, is that when you reduce it to an aesthetic, that legalism becomes like your points of how good of a Christian you're being. Do I fit this mold well? How much better do I do it than the next person? And so we compare ourselves to other people. We we judge how much God is pleased with us based on how well we're living a certain lifestyle.
That's right.
And that is works-based mentality. That is legalism.
Yes.
And it does hurt people.
Yeah. What happened in our upbringing when people tried to bring back the cultural norms of the past, but turned it into a legalism?
I don't know how to answer that question because there's so many things that come to my mind.
It broke people.
Yeah.
The wreckage goes far and wide.
Yeah. Okay, so one thing, it was very idealistic, right?
Probably idealistic.
So if you didn't have a dad in the picture, well, you're automatically lesser, right? Through no fault of your own, you're automatically second class. What else? It was definitely geared toward more affluent people who could fit their lifestyle to whatever was the trend at the moment. People who struggled more financially couldn't maybe do those things. They were like, we have to, have whatever set of circumstances because that's what we need to do. What else? I just think that the legalism was a really big thing. I know it made me very proud because it was boxes that I could check.
Yeah.
Right? I know I can dress the way that people say I should dress, and I can talk the way that people say I should talk.
Imagine if you had like a following on Instagram cheering you on in that too.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad that I did all this before social media was too much of a thing. I would have been insufferable. I was insufferable, but at least not a lot of people saw it.
Unless people were exposed.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think it really was the arrogance of we were better. I remember just when I joined the military being surprised that people knew how to live life. Because I was taught this is the only way people can really live life. And I look around and go, people are successful without any of this stuff.
Yeah.
And some of that is a problem in and of itself. I'm not saying people are living well always, but like there's the arrogance of like we're the only ones with answers was definitely. That doesn't do good things to your soul. It just does not do good things to your soul.
Well, it automatically started to create, in my experience, a cult-like experience because now you have a very clear set of markers of these are the people who get it and these are the people who don't.
Yes.
And we're part of the revolution of the people who get it.
Yes.
And the people who don't, poor them because they're in the dark. And so we're automatically better. That's the arrogance you're talking about. Yeah. And I think one of the big things that I would want to say to people who maybe are considering more of a trad lifestyle or who feel that draw, I would tell them, like, when you put those things on a pedestal and when you glorify an aesthetic over faithfulness, you destroy the very thing you're trying to protect.
Ooh, how so?
Because you're like, okay, I want to, protect my family, right? I want to have a good marriage. I want to have kids that love me and grow up and can go into life well. and you destroy those things.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many marriages I saw destroyed by what I grew up in.
Yeah.
Or kids who grew up to hate their parents because of how insufferable the parents were being. And I'm not saying the kids always responded well either.
Sure.
But that was like, I think, an example of what Paul talks about of don't provoke your children to anger. Parents provoke their children to anger through their control, through their helicopter parenting, through their pride and arrogance.
I think there's no surer way to have unhappy children than to design your family to fit the latest fad. There's no sure way to have unhappy children. Because what it is, it's almost like a utopian, we have created heaven on earth. And it doesn't give room or grace for the fact that that's not reality. And it's devastating.
How does that affect the children?
So I know for us, we were taught to have academic excellence. And there's parts of that I really appreciate, for sure. But with that, there was this an arrogance. You know more than other adults. You know more. Hey, you know more about the Bible than a lot of these pastors. Oh, as bad as it's true.
I was told the same thing. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was true.
Yeah.
I was taught the Bible very well. And I learned the Bible very well, even on my own. But that's grace. That was the Lord at work. But my dad definitely turned that into pride. Well, to a lesser extent, maybe my mom too. But it's just like, we know the Bible better. And since then, I've learned so much more. And I'm like, we were just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
And we didn't even have things lined up correctly. Like there was no instruction on how to teach, how to even read the narrative sections of the Old Testament, and or the particularly the wisdom literature of the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And Proverbs was about as far as we would get, and even that could be ham-fisted in the way that it was applied.
Well, Proverbs. Okay, this is my hot take on Proverbs in the authoritarian fundamentalist movement.
Okay.
Proverbs was their prosperity gospel. It's like the handbook. Like, if you do this, then you will force God to give you a good life by obeying his rules. It's very legalistic, very prosperity gospel.
Yeah. Silly little legalists.
And Proverbs is such a cool book.
It is.
It's amazing.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to say specifically to women? That issue. Or can we move on to men?
Yeah, let's talk about men.
Okay. Let's talk about men. I'm reminded of that old YouTube video where a guy pretends to be a Christian girl. And he's just like, I love how Mark Driscoll speaks to men. Anyway, this is like 2010. I don't know. It's forever ago. I don't know. We're not going to talk that way to men. I think men have been villainized by both the conservatives and the liberals. On one side, you have toxic. Everything about men is considered toxic. So toxic masculinity becomes, I like football. You're like, well, you like violence. It's like kind of that scolding school marm, don't be a man, because it makes me uncomfortable thing.
Yeah.
And then, of course, on the right, it's like, men need to stand up, but don't stand up to your leader because you're supposed to submit to them, So there's only a handful of men got to be full-fledged men,
That's interesting. I've seen that on the left, but I didn't really think about that so much on the right.
Yeah, the war on masculinity comes from Satan, not a political ideology.
Yeah.
Because God hates us all. Same thing. There's a war on femininity, too. And so young men in growing numbers were like ashamed of their gender.
Yeah.
Ashamed of of who God created them to be, ashamed of the testosterone that flows in their veins. And that's first of all, an attack on God. God made men the way he made men. Now, men are fallen, and we need to address our sins and be faithful. But there is a way we've been created. It's fairly obvious. There's differences. That is no slight against the artistic man who might not like, the kinds of more traditional masculine things. I like motorcycles. I like whiskey. I like cigars. I fit that mold. It doesn't make me more masculine or more Christian or a better man. I do tend to like those things. A more artistic man who's playing a violin is no less masculine in that sense.
Or who enjoys fashion.
Or never thought of a man enjoying fashion. That's funny. Anyway, sorry.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, you look at like the gay community and shows about that, men doing fashion and stuff, and I'm like, that's not a feminine.
Aesthetics are God created.
Yeah, that's not an inherently feminine thing. Okay. But anyways.
No, you're right. You're 100% right. 100% right. Yeah. And actually, I have met men who are into fashion, and it's been fine. I met very masculine men who know their clothes.
Yep.
Do you want me to be into fashion?
I think you should be into whatever you want to be into. Whatever your calling is.
Do you want me to dress better?
This is not a critique.
The issue is with the war on masculinity on both from all these different angles, there's a lot of resentment. And angry men can be very dangerous. And I think God created us with the capacity to be dangerous. Yes. Are we supposed to control that and only use that capacity in very, very particular ways? Absolutely. But we are in a world where not all of us are walking in redemption, and there's a lot of anger. And we've seen the damage in Christian men right now.
Yeah.
Like they're
huge.
Christian men are not okay, particularly unmarried Christian men. There's a lot of just hurt and damage there. So then we come to what's on social media, what's on the internet. We have a lot of what's called the manosphere, which is a caricature of masculinity. The worst example is real obvious is Andrew Tate. He's pretty obviously a scumbag. Uses women. He leans into his masculinity. He was a kickboxing champion or something like that. Like he's very athletic. Able to control, his body well, a lot of discipline there. But now he's trying to get rich. Apparently is. I mean, he can have it. Then there's kind of a Christian version of the manosphere. There's different versions of this. The worst ones I've seen are the Eastern Orthodox guys. There's not all of them are the same, of course, but some of them are really aggressive and very, very violent, almost. And again, there's an appropriate place for violence. There's things that we are fighting back against. I just don't know if it should be carpet bombing everyone who has a different opinion. And then we have like the leftists, the kind of more liberal things. It's kind of interesting that the political party that leans left right now is the Democrat Party. It's really interesting to watch them go, why can't we reach young men? It's like why can't we reach the people that we hate? I don't know. I don't know why you can't reach young men. You keep telling them what a piece of garbage they are and that they should hate themselves. So implicitly, not explicitly, but the messaging's there. And not to get into politics, because there's a lot that can be said about every political party right now, both of them. But it's just like there's all this maliciousness against men and wanting traditional things. Right now, men want marriage more than women on a national level. Now, in our churches, particularly the evangelical churches we're a part of, there's a lot more women ready for marriage probably than men. But on a national level, that's not the case. And so you have men who want families, keep getting rejected by women who want a girl boss and party, and the resentment is growing. So the draw to the traditional lifestyle is really obvious then. Like, I want to get myself a trad wife, and it's a pendulum swing, right? It goes when we were last podcasting like 2.5 years ago, this wasn't really, I mean, it was there, but it wasn't near to the degree that it is now. It's not near.
Well, and to give you credit, you were calling it out.
That's true, I was.
You were saying the right is coming back.
Yeah.
It's coming.
Because what the left was doing is it was unsustainable. You can't pretend that gender is fluid. You can't pretend that it's a fluid that like a fluid like an oil you put in your car. Like that's not how that. Like it's just not gonna. Like, it's not a fluid.
It's not reality,
Yeah.
and so it just isn't sustainable.
No, you can't just
Yeah.
make it up as you're going the whole time and pretend like it's okay. So now we have the backlash, and I blame the left for this more than the right. But I don't know if that's true. I blame everybody because here's the truth. Here's the truth. Like Satan doesn't just set one trap.
Yeah.
Like he does not just set one trap.
Yep.
There are multiple ways that we can fall. You know, if we're to be on the road, the straight and the narrow, he will lead us off to the left side or the right side.
You know, I really wish I had heard that when I was younger. Like, I just think back to, we were all talking about, like, you know, this is, you know, the way that the world is, and this is how, you know, Satan is working, and, you know, we're not going to do that. And I didn't realize he could put a pitfall on both sides of the road, you know, and I was falling into the other one.
Yeah. Which is why, and what is the road? We follow Jesus. Jesus angered the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Herodians, all. Do we need to get our battery charger?
I'll get it, yeah.
Thank you, love. He angered the Pharisees the most because they were the ones, they were having the right conversation. And I think this is why we talk a lot to, you know, we're talking to conservative Christians. They're having the right conversation, but a lot of times they're doing it in a Pharisaical way. And the Pharisees, of course, were the ones who, you know, got Jesus crucified. So they initiated that. Well, the Pharisees and the Sadducees got together. But the Pharisees tried first. Then the Sadducees, they liked their political clout and power. They had more connection to the world, and the Herodians were just political operatives for Herod. You'll find through the Gospels accounts of all of them having dealings with Jesus. It just happened to be the Pharisees the most. The Sadducees were the ones with the political connection to get Jesus crucified. You actually notice that the Pharisees aren't mentioned at the crucifixion of Jesus up until, if I remember correctly, fact check me out there, people, which means you have to read your Bible. I believe it's when the Pharisees asked for Jesus' body to be taken off of the cross.
Interesting.
Because it was about to be Passover or the Sabbath, which was a Sabbath, I believe. Either way. They wanted the body, his body and the bodies of the two thieves beside him to be taken down. So that was... They're like, we're not really involved in politics, but here's a ritualistic thing. They come right back for that one, you know, with no shame for the fact that they had helped put him there. So you just see, like, Jesus really angered everybody, but then, and I think that those of us who follow Jesus will anger people of every kind of group that there is, whether it's a progressive group or a trad group or what have you. And a lot of the trad groups right now are claiming the name of Jesus, and the Pharisees claim the name of Moses and God, in a sense, and yet they were opposed to God. You know, you can use his name and be opposed to him. We've definitely seen that in history.
Yeah.
So with men, it's...
because there's a lot of power in Christianity.
There's a lot of power.
There's so much... there's so much power in so many ways. So much history, so much... of a lot of things. So, and you see, like, the right or this even this, like, glorification of Christianity coming back. We just watched a movie the other day, and the whole plot revolved around, like, paintings of Jesus.
Right.
And I was like, that would not have happened 10 years ago.
No.
Like, movies wanted nothing to do with Jesus. And here it's like a completely non-Christian movie talking about Jesus up and down, which was, I mean, they're not believers. They're not talking about it in a way that...
No gospel was
No. But as a historical fact, they found that fascinating and wanted to capitalize on that.
Or you have, right now we also see things like everyone from Joe Rogan to Andrew Schultz, the PBR podcast, things that are sort of right, but not really, kind of, you know, more populist right, I guess, right now for the moment, that are having Christian conversations. Shout out to Wesley Huff, who's done a fantastic job with some of those conversations in those podcasts. We see Andrew Peterson talking about Christianity in a different sort of way. Not so much that he'd actually get to the gospel, but he is pulling a lot of very interesting life lessons out of the Bible. And I'm like, you're such a smart guy in so many ways.
But that's dangerous too, because there's a power to Christianity that you can hijack and use for your own agenda without Jesus being a part of it at all, without the gospel being central at all.
That's right. Yeah. So, I mean, the culture is shifting. This is where we're at. And here's the thing. Christianity is going to be okay. For us, though, if we're looking at the trad lifestyle, honestly, I don't want goats. But I'll take the sourdough.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I would say I don't care what your aesthetic is. If you want to wear 1950s dresses and vacuum and wear pearls, go for it. I don't care. As long as you don't elevate that or any aesthetic to what the definition of what biblical womanhood is.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as men, I think just it's careful. We can build our lives contrary to the pressures of the world that are inappropriate, that are wrong. And there's going to be a lot of those pressures from a lot of different directions. We can do it. Sometimes we might even have to be angry, and sometimes we might even have to use aggression in order to protect that which God has given us. But we need to do so in a way that is honoring to the Lord and his commands. Vengeance belongs to the Lord. You know, those very, very important commands. We need to control our anger. I think a lot of times when men feel defeated by the world, they'll turn on their families. That's the worst kind of abusive man, I think, or control their families in really unhelpful ways. So this is something we really need to do. But let's be careful not to diminish one another as brothers and sisters. I think it's so easy to diminish one another and be really angry at the other gender. And we need to. Both men and women are made in the image of God. That's important. That's important.
Yeah, I think that's a good call to end this on, one of unity for us as believers.
Yeah.
To honor, like, for me, I look at, okay, what is the calling that God has placed on each person? And it's going to look different for each person, you know? One person might be homesteading, and that is the calling that God has called them to, and that's what's honoring to God. That's what they're doing to be faithful. And I should applaud them in that. And I could look at another person who's like, you know, a businesswoman, or they run a ministry, and their life doesn't look as trad, but they're still honoring the Lord and being faithful. And we should honor both people and the calling that God has put on their life, and not judge people based on, do you fit a specific mold? Which mold do I fit in? And therefore everybody else is wrong. That divides the church in a really harmful way.
That's right. Yeah. And let's remember Jesus. Let's remember Jesus. In some ways, he was calling back a call that goes all the way back to the garden. It's a very old tradition. God walking in a garden with his people. And he wants to restore that tradition. He wants to walk with us in the garden city that comes from heaven again.
Yeah.
And all the Bible in the middle is God restoring a garden with his people, so he can walk with us again. And that's the oldest tradition. And if there's a tradition to call to, is I want to walk with Jesus in the garden. I want to walk with my God in the garden. And there's got to be things that are traditional that help me in that. Society and culture will continue to shift and change, and we'll see what we have to keep, what we have to throw away, what we have to modify. But the commands of the Scripture are timeless, and we can be faithful. Like, we have the ability to be faithful.
Yeah, that's good. There's a lot of comfort in that.
Yeah. Well, we love you guys. Thank you so much for checking us out at Control Free Christianity. And any last words for the peoples?
Enjoy your sourdough.
Enjoy your sourdough. All right. Thank you guys so much. And we will catch you hopefully in about 2 weeks. See you again.
See ya.